So today I'm going to talk a little bit about home automation with Python 3. Disclaimer for anybody hoping to see a whole bunch of Python or Python 3, there's actually not going to be a lot of that. Sorry. This is mainly because there's a whole bunch of prerequisites to home automation way before we get to where there would actually be some Python. Don't worry, we'll get there. This is a short talk though, not a complete talk. Otherwise, the other entire half of it would be all the Python 3. Maybe part 2 later. So our short agenda tonight, we got some overview of home automation, the case for open source, and things we can do with our snazzy home automation. But first, it's really useful to ask, of course, what is home automation? So here we have a few different easy examples of it. Everybody needs to automate their cat feeder for when they're away. So you have an automated cat feeder. And then, of course, since everybody has 36 port Ethernet switches sitting around on their tables, you can wire that in. And, of course, your cat feeder should be on the internet. How else would it be hacked to have people send spam? Some other wonderful examples, which is actually more what we're going to talk about since I don't think everybody wants to build these. We have the typical smart home. You got screens all over the place. You can never have too many screens. That's why we always carry one around in our pocket as well. Dimmers, you got water heaters, you got locks, depending on how daring you are. Who doesn't want a computer controlling whether or not you can get into your house? And then, of course, down here we have all sorts of little things that are apparently on Wi-Fi, which also terrifies me. So yeah. What could ever go wrong with all of these little devices? I mean, surely there would not be any problems with this whatsoever, because everybody needs their smart refrigerator to expose their Gmail logins. Now, what I think is particularly awesome about this example is the related right here. We got like, welcome to the smart home of horror, security holes in your smart hubs, your router, gateway for hackers. I don't know, like if I came across this page and I was like, oh, I can't wait to hook my home up to the internet, this page would make me go, oh, hell no. So it's really important to remember in light of this, that the Internet of Things is not the same as home automation. This is really critical, and everybody seems to confuse these. They seem to think, oh, well, and also, I'll admit, lots of people look at all those neat little smart this, smart that, that's all on Indiegogo or Kickstarter, and your sneakers are going to have IP addresses, and everything's going to be on the internet. I'm not a big fan of the Internet of Things. My things should actually not be on the internet. That's my strange little concept. Home automation doesn't actually have anything to do with that. People have been automating homes for a really long time. They've been making all sorts of stuff happen way before anybody thought, well, sure, I want my front door on the internet. Because, of course, that would not be a problem. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about all of these things that are on the internet with your smart fridge and all this other stuff. I didn't pull up the article, by the way, but one of my other favorite ones, again, smart fridge. Smart fridge got hacked. There's an entire group of these sending spam emails. So that's just fantastic. But ideally, we don't want things in our house on the internet. At least I don't. I want them very far from the internet, or at least a layer removed. So ideally, when I look at devices and think about what in my house could be automated or could be giving me more feedback on what it's doing, well, first off, I want to look at non-Wi-Fi things. So on that front, we have a few different prerequisites here. So the top two here, all three of these are different forms of communication. The top two are very similar. So Z-Wave and Z-Wave Plus, if nobody's heard of it, it's a very low power thing. It's intended for devices in a home, like outlets, wall switches, dimmer switches. There's locks that work on Z-Wave and Zigbee. The other nice thing about these, if you wire in a switch somewhere, they extend the network. Both Z-Wave and Zigbee are mesh network topologies. So as you wire in more of these around your house, your range expands and everything will automatically try to find the shortest route back to the controller, which we'll get to here in a minute. Z-Wave is what I'm going to focus on this, and that's mainly because one company holds the license and patent to it at the moment, which is Sigma Designs, and they're the only ones that can manufacture a chip. Now, that sounds kind of bad until you realize that there's so many different things using Zigbee, which is an IEEE standard. There is no standard on the chips. And as, I don't know if anybody's used other things which are based on standards, but sometimes you find out that this thing on the standard doesn't want to talk to that thing supposedly on the same standard, but they did it slightly differently. That happens with Zigbee a lot more than Z-Wave. So I've generally tried to pull up Z-Wave type things, and you could find lots of these. If you actually just search on Amazon.com for Z-Wave, you'll be amazed at the amount of things that you can just go ahead and plop onto a Z-Wave network. And then, of course, our last one, Bluetooth LE. A bunch of people are familiar with this. This is the low-energy Bluetooth standard. It's on the newer phones. If anybody's used Apple HomeKit, a bunch of HomeKit devices generally either use Wi-Fi or they use Bluetooth LE. The main problem with something like Bluetooth LE over the other two is that Bluetooth LE is not a mesh network, and you need to make sure that the main controller trying to talk to it is within range. So you can easily get a lot of range problems with Bluetooth LE devices. This really matters a lot if this is a sensor, a rain sensor, especially like a door lock. You don't want to find out that your door lock is now too far away from the thing trying to control it. Don't turn your head sideways all at once. This is the only way I can fit a bunch of these on. This is just an example of some of the things that are all Z-Wave, so you can just see some of the different things that you can pick up. You got door and window sensors here, doorbells, garage door openers, got lights, LEDs. I don't know if anybody's used Philips Hue bulbs. Those are fun. They can do a whole bunch of different party things with colors. They can also do different degrees of warmth. If you want softer light or brighter light with more blue in it, you could choose. We've got a whole bunch of different Z-Wave things that we can do. Now, of course, as you might have noticed, as I said, when you have all of your home devices and you have switches and all this other stuff speaking Z-Wave, how do you actually get any of it to do anything, right? Because it's not on the internet. All these devices are talking to each other using the standard Z-Wave or Zigbee. You need something to control them. And this is where you hear the term your smart hub. So this was in the other article in the related, smart hubs getting hacked. We'll go over a little of that too. These are three popular smart hub models. Essentially what they all have in common is they all speak either Z-Wave or Zigbee, generally both. So the concept is you get one of these devices, you put it in your home somewhere, you put it on your Wi-Fi network or some way that your phone could talk to it, and then it talks to all the other devices that are using Z-Wave or Zigbee in your home. That one, I believe, is the SmartThings hub by Samsung now. We got a Wink hub and we have Vera down here. These are several of the most popular ones. These are sort of your more turnkey type things where if you want to just go and buy things that are, this works with so-and-so, that might be a good option. There is one problem here though. This is kind of long. This is from one of the wonderful reviews on the SmartThings hub. SmartThings has always had its quirks. Over the past few weeks, it's gotten so bad, it's become a complete nuisance. Routines are failing constantly. Woke up to a cold house. The thermostat failed to trigger. A dark house. The lights failed to turn on. And a blaring alarm when opening the door. The alarm failed to disarm. When we arrived home, I hit the I'm home routine. And again, the alarm sounded upon entering for reasons unknown, and the house was dark. I read something like this, and I generally run screaming the other way. There is no way in hell I want this in charge of anything in my house. And I definitely don't want to hook up a loud alarm to it. That just seems like a really bad idea. Now, to be fair, when I originally read this 2 months ago, this was a 1-star review. He has since changed it to 5 stars because apparently Samsung rolled out updates over the cloud automatically to his device, which updated itself, and then the issues went away. So he's been doing great for 4 months now. The next paragraph says, hopefully it'll keep on going this way because they might do another update. In case that wasn't a good case for open source, as I just brought up there, we have the issue, what if the Smart Hub's proprietary software has a problem? I don't know, if I'm gonna have something in my home that's gonna be talking to all these different devices, I generally wanna know what's going on with it inside. I wanna be able to see at least, are things getting better or worse? If there's a firmware version or whatever that works, I sure as heck don't want them to send me an automatic update that then breaks my house. That would really suck. So I wanted to set some of this stuff up. So I'm going through looking at this and I go, oh, well, I can't go this way. But I'm kind of familiar with open source software. Surely we have some open source software that does home automation that doesn't involve using proprietary hubs that run who knows what software that's updated by other people that may or may not care as much about what's happening in your house. Hopefully more, but you never know. So here are a few we have. OpenHab is a Java-based one. We have OSA, which is Windows only in C#. We have Home Assistant in Python 3. Spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about more later because it's Python 3. Open Remote, which is in Java. And then there's some others. So I looked through all of these when I was trying to figure out what to do. Because I was like, well, I don't want to use something where some other company is rolling updates to it over the cloud that may or may not break things, and where if it's not working, I can't go in and take a look at why it's not working. I generally like being able to do that. Now, even though I do run some open source software, I'll admit for a fact, I have never gone into the Linux kernel when something has gone wrong with Linux. How many other people here use Linux on occasion? Right, and anytime you've ever had a problem, you immediately go, I'm going to look at the source code. Right, probably not. Many of us probably don't even know C, and we definitely don't know what the hell's going on inside the Linux kernel. The fun thing about these is they're doing a lot less. The code's a lot smaller. You can actually get into this. For example, on Home Assistant, which I'm going to talk a bit more about in Python 3, the core of it is only about 600 lines of code. You can actually read this and understand what's going on. And that was really meaningful to me. Now, of course, even once you have this rolling, you have it all running, what are you going to run it on, right? I showed you earlier we have these hubs. We need something to run this on. And that's where we have an open source smart hub. So we've got a Raspberry Pi here. That little thing stuck into it is a Z-Wave USB stick. You can buy those about 40 bucks. So you got a Raspberry Pi 3 in that, and you got about 90 bucks. You're done. You're ready to automate your home. Depending on how paranoid you are, you could turn off the Wi-Fi on the Raspberry Pi or just not even plug it into the internet after you configure it. It doesn't have to be on the internet. So let's talk about Home Assistant. The current requirements are Python 3.4.2 or better. This is actually a recent one. Earlier, I think it was only 3.4. I might have had something to do with bumping it up to 3.4.2. There's a whole bunch of integrations. You can make it talk to your Philips Hue lights. If you have a Plex media server, it can talk to that. It can talk to access points. You might be surprised why you would care about that. Very active and friendly community, regular release schedule. So this is a fun little piece of software to use. Let's look at a few of the things we can do really quick. So this is right off the website, and you'll see that it's more than home automation. I might have actually been joking a little bit when I said home automation, because you don't actually have to automate things. Because you'll notice the first category here is observing. Home Assistant can track the state of all the devices in your home. It can talk to your Nest, your Hue, your Plex, if you have a Vera or one of the other smart hubs, it can actually talk to that. It can talk to your Netgear. You can actually have it give you a histogram of what devices are going on and off your Wi-Fi network throughout the day. So you can observe a decent amount of stuff just that's happening at home. You can use it to control things. You don't have to automate everything. And then, of course, you can do automation as well. Now, wait a second, you can observe. This is where I got really interested. I'm not ready to have my front door on any computer. I just don't trust computers enough. I've worked with them too long to trust them to open my front door. This is what my current panel looks like on my Home Assistant. Got my wife's iPad and iPhone there. The all devices stuff is being pulled for and comes off an access point. The history of it is all tracked. This all goes into a SQLite database. Again, all of this is Python. You can add to it, extend it easily. You have your own data monitoring tool that integrates with all sorts of other things that you might not have considered home automated stuff or smart home stuff, but you can actually pull it all together. It queries Wonderground. There's one of the local Katati ones. We have microclimates up in the North Bay, so generally anything, any of the big guys that give me the weather are always wrong because they're not in the same area. I have some Philips Hue lights that I put in so I can turn on the living room lights. I have a sensor that I got for 40 bucks or whatever that's on Z-Wave, so that goes ahead and can turn on motion activated. So you want your lights in your living room to turn on when it gets too dark? There you go. You can check the luminance to make sure it's below a certain thing. When the motion goes off, if the lights are off, the lights can go on. If it hasn't happened in 3 minutes, they go back off again. This is really simple, basic stuff to throw together. If you have a Plex or something and you want to make sure too many people aren't watching all of your wonderful DVDs that you ripped yourself, of course, you can check that too. It pulls in all the information in one spot for you. If you want to get super fancy, because it's, that's too boring, it's too easy, right? No. You want to run InfluxDB. You want to collect all your metrics and start getting serious with your data. You can do it. There's an InfluxDB reporting plugin. You can then make your Grafana graphs, because why should the things you learn at work stay there? Bring them home. Now you know what your kitchen temperature is all day long. So there's a whole bunch of possibilities here. You can have your own Nagios or PagerDuty for your home, right? What's going on there? They have it plugged in, so you can easily set up a little automation. So maybe some motion happens. It sends you a push notification or SMS text message. No problem. You can graph your own metrics of your house activity. Never know. Interesting things happen. You could set up your automations to trigger things. Here's a fun one many people don't think about. You have Flux and you have all these things for your devices so they stop emitting blue light at night. Philips Hue lights can actually go softer. You can change the spectrum that they emit. You can set up Flux for your home. They actually have a plugin and component that does this. When it gets later in the evening, it starts changing the hue of all the lights that you've set up for it. That's kind of cool stuff. So there's a whole bunch more of these. There's an entire list of them all in the cookbook. There's a whole bunch of components. I'm not going to go through them. There's too many. There's like 900 of these. The community has been very busy integrating with everything. Maybe next time in a part 2, we can go over how the Home Assistant core functions, scheduling component callbacks. This is all the Python 3 stuff, but this isn't a full talk. Utility of Python 3 type hints. The code base has a whole bunch of these throughout it. If you haven't used them before, they're very, very handy. Good tools like PyCharm can start telling you when you've used methods that don't exist on an object, because your tool knows what the object actually is. We could go over handling async coroutine listeners versus blocking with thread pools. We have all these different libraries that are talking to each other when you automate these things. Some of them want to actually go to the internet, some don't, but they block. That comes up. So, whole bunch of neat things you can do. If anybody thought it was all about doing clever things like turning on your thermostat or making alarms go off, hopefully you know that there's a lot more that you can do with this now. That's it. Thank you.